Good evening, grade 12s. Today I'm starting the module 11 on reconciliation. In this module, we're going to be doing the reconciliations of bank, debtors, and creditors. The bank reconciliation and the creditors reconciliation is something that you have done last year, and you also did some of the reconciliations in grade 10. So initially there'll be some revision, and then we'll go into more exam type questions. There is one new section in this, which is the debtor's age analysis. I'll obviously do that with you in more detail. The first question we're starting is with task 11.2, and after doing this task, I would like you to try task 11.1 as homework. Okay, so task 11.2 is for each more retailers. We're doing a creditors reconciliation. Now this is called an external reconciliation, where the creditors ledger that we have in our books is compared to the creditors statement. This is exactly the reconciliation that you did last year in term 1. Okay, so this is just purely revision. Okay, so in 11.2.1, we have to prepare some journal entries. In exams, generally journal entries are not as important, but we will obviously do some in these questions so that you can so it will aid in the explanation for the actual work. And in 11.2.2, we're preparing a creditors reconciliation statement, okay, which is one of the main parts. I've also added a creditors ledger, which I would like you guys to also do in your workbooks. Okay, so we're going to be doing the main part of this is the creditors ledger and the creditors reconciliation. Okay, so let's start. Now, if you remember correctly from last year, this is what you actually have to do where I say we must do the ticking in the question. Okay, so what it means is we go through both the statement and the ledger, okay, and we do ticking. And if the figures agree, then we don't do anything about it. And if they don't agree, then we have to obviously do something about it. Okay, so if you look on page 432 in your textbook, you have a debtor statement. Okay, the debtor statement is from Umgeni Shoes for Village Mall retailers. Now, our business is Village Mall retailers, which means Umgeni Shoes is our creditor. So on page 432, this is the statement we have received from our creditor. So if you remember last year, we used to write next to it, on top of it, theirs. And then on page 433, we have the creditors ledger of Village Mall retailers for Umgeni Shoes, which is the creditors ledger, and this is in our books. Now, when you're doing the comparison, every figure that they have in their debit column must be in our credit column. Every figure which they have in their credit column must be in our debit column, and vice versa. So we'll go through each figure. Okay, now when we're starting these reconciliations, now remember we're doing the creditors ledger, additional to your question, and the creditors reconciliation. Now in the creditors ledger, the starting point, okay, will be the balance that we have in our creditors ledger. So right at the end of it all. So the creditors ledger, the balance right at the bottom of the table is 26,030. Okay, so you're going to put that 26,030 in your column. Okay, next to that you can just say balance wrote down. Okay, and in the creditors reconciliation, the starting point will be the balance at the end, so right at the bottom of their statement, right? And what happens here is that because they are our creditor, in our books we are their debtor. So we'll say debit balance per creditor statement. However, in exams, you don't really have to say debit, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. Now, for the creditors reconciliation, I'm doing two methods, the one column method and the two column method. So in the one column method, I'll put this in the debit column. The reason is because in their books, we are an asset. And in the one column method, we'll just put the amount in, 20,540. Okay, so now that we've got that, we'll now carry on with the rest of the question. Okay, so I'm going to be looking on page 432 first, and we're going to be comparing the figures as we go along through them to the creditors ledger on the next page. So the first figure is 23,200 in the debit column. It should be in our credit column, and yes, it is, so we don't have to do anything with it. The next thing is a discount in the credit column of 500 yen in their books, and it should be in the debit column of our books. Okay, which it isn't. Okay, now if you notice a discrepancy like this, you'll then look at your additional information to determine who made the error. If the creditor made the error on their statement, or if we made the error in our ledger account. Okay, so if you look at number 1, Village Mall retailers were not aware that Umgeni Shoes granted a discount for their payment at the end of July. Okay, so that means that we have so there's basically a discount. This discount needs to be recorded by us, right? So 500 yen is the amount of the discount. I'm sorry, I don't know why the textbook says end of July, but it's actually on the 2nd of August. Okay, but just ignore that. Okay, so 500 yen. Okay, which was in their credit column, which will now have to be in our debit column. Okay, so if there's a mistake in our books, okay, we'll go to the general journal, and we're going to record it in the general journal. Okay, so our journal entry is debit creditors control. Okay, Umgeni Shoes. The reason we debit creditors control is because the liability is decreasing with the discount, and we credit discount received. These figures will be in the general ledger debit and credit columns. It will also be in the creditors control debit column. So that's the journal entry. Okay, you could put a narration if you want to, but it's really not necessary, so you can just see what you want to do with that, right? Okay, so it's a mistake that has been made in our books, right? So that means that we have to record it in our creditors ledger. So if we go to the creditors ledger, we're going to say discount received, and we're going to put that in brackets or with a minus sign in front of it. The reason is that a discount obviously decreases the amount we owe in creditor. Okay, after the 500, the next figure on page 432 is 10,000 in the credit column. And is it in our debit column? 10,000 Rand? It isn't. Okay, so 10,000 Rand is a receipt 1701. We need to look through the additional information to see who made the error. Okay, now 10,000 Rand. 10,000 Rand, if you look at it, the balance brought down in their statement is 17,400. So this is the balance at the beginning of the month. And the balance brought down in our ledger is 7,400. Now the reason is that probably the payment that we had made last month, that we had already debited in our ledger, was not yet credited by them because of the timing differences. Because if we made a deposit into their account, then obviously it takes a few days to reflect with the bank. So the 10,000 is actually a discrepancy from the previous month. So what this means is that 10,000 was recorded already in our books, but they hadn't yet recorded it last month, and now they have recorded it. So we do not have to do anything for that one. After the 10,000, the next figure is 730 yen, which is in their credit column. It should be in our debit column. Now in our debit column, around about on the same day, is a figure of 370 yen. So it looks like somebody made a mistake in where they've switched the figures a bit. Let's look at the additional information to see who made that mistake. Okay, so in number 2, Umgeni Shoes, which is them, made an error regarding the return of goods on 5th of August. Okay, so they have made the mistake. We need to work out the difference between 730 and 370. And because they have made the mistake, it does not affect our general journal, does not affect our ledger. It will only affect the creditors record. Okay. Now 730 rand, they placed it in the credit column. It was too much. So now we're going to have to debit it. So we're going to say debit error. It doesn't, the details don't matter, but I just say debit error on return. You're going to work out the amount. Okay, so it will be 730 minus 370, and that gives you an answer of 360. Okay, debit error. And in the one column method, when we debit, we add. So 360, you just add it on here in your calculation. Okay, after the 730, still on page 432, is 11,300 in the debit column. It should be in our credit column. Okay, so this is on 11th of August. Now, in 11th of August, we do have an amount in our credit column, but it is 13,100. Now, again, we need to see who made that error. Okay, okay, so this is invoice 458. So if you look at number 4, in respect of invoice 458, Umgeni shoes are correct. So that means their statement with 11,300 is correct, and our ledger with 13,100 is incorrect. So this is an error that we have made. We will correct it in our general journal and then also in the creditors ledger. So 13,100 is in the credit column. It is too much. So we're going to have to debit creditors control and credit trading stock. Okay, because that's generally what we buy from our creditors is trading stock. You're going to work out the difference between those two amounts. So you get 1,800. Okay, so we'll put that in the general ledger columns. And we'll also put it in the debit of the creditors control column. Okay, so this is the correction of error. We'll also go and do this in our creditors ledger. Okay, so this was invoice 458. I said overstated. Okay, so we're going to subtract 1,800 because we're not owing them that money. Okay, after 11,300, the next thing is 22,000 in their credit column, and it is in our debit column, so we don't have to do anything about it. Then we have 1,100 in their credit column, but in our debit column we have 2,200 for the discount. So again, let's look at the additional information to see who is incorrect. Okay, so it says that the number 3, Village Mall retailers made an error regarding the discount on 12th of August. So that means that our discount is incorrect. So 2,200 should have actually been 1,100. You would again have to work out the difference. Because it is our error, we will pass a journal entry. Okay, so discount received is normally an income, but we actually need to reverse some of it. So we're going to debit discount received and credit creditors control for Ungeni shoes. Okay, the difference between those two amounts will be 1,100 in the general ledger and in the credit column of the creditors control. Okay, then we're also going to do this in our creditors ledger. Okay, so this was the discount which was overstated. Okay, that means we are owing them the money again, so we're going to add on 1,100. Okay, then after the 1,100, we have invoice for 2,560 in the debit column on page 432. And we need to look at our credit column. Okay, so this is invoice 477, which doesn't even seem to appear at all in our ledger. So let's just look at the additional information to see what is happening there. Okay, so number 5, Village Mall retailers, which is us, did not order the goods reflected in invoice 477. So this is an error that the creditor has made in their books. This probably belonged to another one of their customers. So we actually need to remove it from the account. So the 2,560 is in the debit column. To remove it, we're going to have to credit. So we're going to say credit invoice 477 for goods not ordered. In the 2-column method, I'll put it in the credit column. In the 1-column method, we need to put it in brackets or with a minus sign in front of your calculation because it's a credit balance. Okay, and then on the last line on page 432 is delivery charges of 410, and it does not appear in our credit column. Okay, so number 7, the entry of the statement on 25th August for delivery charges is correct. So that means that these delivery charges which they've charged our account for, we were not aware of it. So we now need to record it in our books. So go to the general journal. Okay, we're going to debit trading stock because delivery charges under the perpetual inventory system always just come to trading stock. It does not go to carriage on purchases. We're going to credit creditors control of Umgeni shoes with the 410. Okay, the reason you credit the account is because we're owing them more money now for the delivery charges. And then we're going to go to the creditors ledger. Okay, and we're going to put it in so the delivery charges increase the amount that we're owing to them. So we're going to add on 410. Okay, it's a credit amount. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we're going to go through onto page 433 and deal with the figures in the ledger that we haven't yet dealt with. So as I'm going through it, the 23,200 we've dealt with. Okay, then there's a debit note on 5th August for 370 Rand. That was the one we corrected. It was the difference between 370 and 730. Then invoice 458, we have already sorted it out. It was corrected also. Then the check for 22,000, the discount of 2,200 is also done. Then invoice 24388 for 9,800. Now that is in our credit column, but it does not appear in their debit column. Okay, so let's just see what it says in the additional information. And there it says that number 6, invoice 24338 covers goods that Village Mall retailers bought from another business to Gela manufacturers. So we bought it from somebody else, not from Umgeni Shoes. We need to remove it from the creditors ledger of Umgeni Shoes. So we're going to debit creditors control of Umgeni Shoes and we're going to credit creditors control of Tugela manufacturers. You can put this in the general ledger, although it has nothing really to do with the general ledger. It's more about the creditors ledger. Okay, so that's done. Then if we look at invoice 562, the check and the discount thereafter, none of those appear in Umgeni Shoes statement. And the reason for this is because of the dates. Those happen after the 25th of August, and Umgeni Shoes statement stopped on 25th of August. So all of those transactions, the invoice for 5,900, the check for 8,000, and the discount of 800, have all not been recorded on their statement, which makes them all reconciling items, and we will go and place them in our recon. Okay, so the check for 5,900 is in our credit column. The invoice for 5,900 is in our credit column. It should be in their debit column. So we're going to say debit invoice 562. In the one column method, two column method, we put it in the debit column. In the one column method, we'll add it on because it's a debit balance. The next thing is the check for 8,000 Rand, which is in our debit column. It must be in their credit column. So in the credit column in this method, and here we will be subtracting because it's a credit balance. Okay, and then the discount, okay, in our debit column should be in their credit column. So we're going to credit the discount of 800, and here we'll be subtracting because it's a credit amount. Okay, and then that's all for this for now. All we need to do now is work out our answers. Okay, so if we go to the creditors ledger, I'm just going to work it all out. So basically calculating from 26,030 down to 410. Sorry, I think I missed out one thing. I just realized now. Okay, then invoice 24338 for 9,800. I forgot to have done it in the general journal, but forgot to put the transaction in the creditors ledger. Okay, so this was invoice 24338, which was actually for the other creditor, Umgeni Shoes. Okay, so okay, Remember here we debited creditors control of Umgeni shoes, so we're not going to subtract it because it's a credit balance. Okay, and now you will just work out your answer. Okay, so basically we can work out from 26,030 going down to minus 9,800, and that gives us an answer of 15,440. Okay, here in the one column method, you'll just work out your answers from the top. Okay, and it also gives us 15,440, which tells us that it's balanced. And in the two column method, what we'll actually do is work out a look at the two columns, look at which side is bigger, and it's definitely definitely the debit side. So we're going to put that answer in on both sides. Okay, we will then work out the difference between 26,800, 2560, 8,800. Okay, to get the answer of 15,440. And next week we just say credit balance per creditor's ledger. Okay, so that's all for this question. I will also be doing 11.3 with you. Please remember to do 11.1 by yourself. And if you have any questions, you can ask me in the WhatsApp group. Bye.